Hello everybody, the Necromancer has finally launched, which means we can review the class and determine whether or not it's worth picking up at all, and if it's any good. Couldn't do this before because, it was the beta and things are subject to change, and between the beta and launch, we weren't sure if there was an internal build that Blizzard was running that changed things or not. But now that it's out, we could tell you whether or not it's worth picking up. And I think there's two parts to this. If you're playing Diablo already, if you're someone who already enjoys playing Diablo, maybe you play the seasons, maybe you just pop in every now and again, then yes, it is worth picking up because it is a fresh new class that will change the meta, especially group meta, as far as the seasons are concerned, which is great. If you're someone who doesn't play a lot of Diablo, if any at all, and you're not really sure whether or not you want to come play it, then that is a case-by-case basis. So you have to kind of determine that on your own. I would say if you're someone who doesn't play Diablo much at all, then it's probably not worth it, simply because you don't play it at all, so you don't really have much experience with all the other classes. But if you're looking for something fresh in Diablo, then sure, it is definitely something fresh. Is it any good? It's actually very good. It's not overpowered. It's not over other classes. And in fact, I would say it's mid to bottom tier if you take out the build that I'm running in the background. And I'll talk about all that in a moment. But what you get with the Necromancer pack is definitely exciting with the $15. You're not just getting the Necromancer, right? You're also getting 2 stash tabs, which totally is worth the $15 for some of us. You have no idea how good that is. But then you're also getting a couple cosmetic items. You're getting a pet, a pennant, which is like something that you wear on your back, and a pair of wings and stuff. So there is some additional things that come along with the pack. But if you're playing on console, you don't get the stash tabs, which definitely diminishes the value. So it's not worth the $15 on console to me. On PC it is, and that simply comes down to those 2 stash tabs. That's, again, as a case-by-case basis, completely based on whether or not you value those 2 stash tabs as much as I do. But I think the Necromancer is worth $10, and all of the other cosmetic stuff and the additional stuff is worth $5. So it is worth the $15 to me, especially as someone who plays a lot of Diablo, and it's within that price range that we thought it would be. $10 would have been a bit too generous, I feel. $15 was kind of like right on the money, and then $20 was a bit too much. So the $15 price point, I feel, is fair and is worth it, but it's also not diminishing the value of all the other stuff that you get. So let's talk about the class now. So if you are a casual player, what I mean by that is someone who isn't necessarily putting in hundreds of hours every season, which, let's be honest, is most of us. Most of us I would consider casual Diablo players. We're not the cutting edge. We're not being competitive every season, even though we may get on the leaderboard and we go and get our cosmetic stuff every season. Or if you're even below that, you're like, I only play maybe a couple times a year, or I haven't played in a long time. To me, you're a casual Diablo player. I fall within that on most seasons. If you're one of those players, you're going to get a lot out of this class because at its core, it is a fun class to play. I've watched a lot of streams and talked to a lot of friends. In fact, watched a lot of friends stream as well. And I've seen their reaction to the class, and it's just joy. The class is a lot of fun to play because there are a lot of really cool things. And what I mean by this is when you're leveling up and the moment that you unlock Corpse Explosion, this is like across the board, it happens with everybody. And it's the best thing to watch when they use it for the first time. Because Corpse Explosion is a very satisfying effect. It does a lot of damage, and it is really good for leveling. So it makes you immediately feel really, really powerful. And in a game like this, a top-down isometric action RPG, having something that feels like it's doing a lot of damage is so key. Making yourself feel powerful is part of the fantasy there. And Corpse Explosion just completely fulfills that. So watching someone for the first time ever use Corpse Explosion and seeing their pure joy, it is the embodiment of the rest of the class, because it's not just Corpse Explosion. It's all these other abilities too that are really, really good. So when you play the Necromancer, it is fun to play. There is a lot of really cool stuff there. That said, Corpse Explosion at the end game does fall off. It's not as good. That's because it's reliant on corpses, and when you're leveling, you have a lot of corpses. When you're doing a large Greater Rift, you don't have a lot of corpses at first. You have to kind of rely on wonky ways to generate corpses, which removes from your toolkit. So there are some builds, and I will put up a build video of a cool Corpse Explosion build that I have used and I really enjoy, but it's not going to push, Greater Rift 90 anytime soon. So, some of the abilities I think are really fun and are well designed in that they make the class really fun to play, but they're not necessarily something that you're going to be using at the end game. So keep that in mind when you're using Corpse Explosion, you're leveling up. It's not as good as you think it is, and that's simply due to the limitations on that ability. So with that in mind, is the Necromancer any good at the end game? How good is it? Well, this build that I'm running in the background is really cheesy, and we knew about it in the beta, but nobody tested it, of course, because they were trying to test the broken Inarius set, which allowed you to have immunity 100% of the time. So because that was a thing and that didn't get fixed until late beta, it wasn't something that people were running this set, but this is something that we knew about, and we knew it was going to be a problem, and unfortunately it didn't necessarily get fixed. It's a fun set to play, or it's a fun build, I should say, to play. I hope it doesn't get fixed, but I'm almost 100% certain it will before the start of the next season. So what is it? What am I doing in the background? I'm running the Inarius set, which is the bone armor set, and its 6-set bonus gives you 2,750% damage done additionally, just to everything, to all of your skills, to everything. And what this means is most other sets limit it. They say, 2,750% damage done to bone skills or done to necromancer abilities. This just says damage that you do, which means you can kind of cheese it when it comes to different things, such as Mirene. Mirene is a legendary gem. You'll notice the big laser beams coming out of the sky. That's what it is. It just has a chance to smite enemies. When you hit enemies, you have a 15% chance to smite them. And this thing scales so ridiculously on damage. So essentially, you can get it up to, very easily get it up to 8,000% weapon damage every smite. And you can increase that. And then every smite is also healing you for a certain amount. So it's really, really good. But nobody uses the gem because it's not been that useful. In fact, the only reason I have a high level Mirene is because I like running the punch build, the Shenlong's build, on my monk, but I like doing it with a holy variant. So I do like a ton of holy damage, and the Mirene works really well for that, especially because you're punching really, really, really fast on that monk build. That's the only reason I have one of these stupid gems. But in this case, it is being benefited by the Inarius 6-set bonus, which means that you're not really doing any of the damage. It's that Inarius is buffing the Mirene, and Mirene is doing most of the damage there. Outside of that, I'm using Corpse Lance, which is a common thing for this build. It also does a lot of damage and benefits greatly from this. I feel like, and I have, by the way, I have come up with a Corpse Explosion build that works really well for this, and a few others that also work really well for this set. But my fear is that Mirene will not benefit from the set bonus once the season goes live, which means you will not see this set pushing. As it stands, this set could easily push above Greater Rift 100 with the right gear, and that's unfortunate because that is pretty much up at the top of the echelons. Now, if we assume that this build will get nerfed, which it will, then the Necromancer across several different sets, several different kinds of builds, can push upwards of low to mid 90s without this set. So I feel like that is pretty good. In fact, that's mid to higher tiers of what everybody else can push. And I think it's because there is a lot of flexibility that we may see even higher builds than that. So without this build and with mediocre gear, at the start of the season, it'll be like mid to lower tier, but as the season goes on and people figure out how to play the class and figure out how to combo things together, it is mid to higher tier as far as these, all of the other classes is concerned. So, and that's really good. Does it fit into the 4-man meta? This is something we haven't really been able to test because, us as beta testers, we weren't really testing in groups, we were testing it solo. So the thing is, we never really got a chance to figure out how it will fit into the meta. But one thing is for certain, it will. And I think that is a really good sign. And the reason why is because there's so many different kinds of builds that are really good. You know, you have the super, like, really strong single target blow up the Rift Guardian build with the Singularity Skeletal Mages build that works on several different of the sets. Some are better than others, but essentially you're just summoning really big Skeletal Mages that do a stupid amount of damage. And if you're running a 4-man party and you can be spawning health globes and getting your Necromancer a ton of essence, then that is going to be one of the strongest single target builds in the game, period. And there's also other things. There's huge AoE builds. There's support builds nobody's even tried yet. There's a lot of stuff here. So we know that the Necromancer will be in a 4-man group. To what extent? We don't know. Is it just going to be all four, for like 4 Necros? I think that would be fun. Or like 3 Necros and a support monk. Who knows? I think that there's definitely a lot of flavor here to be had, and we'll see in Season 11 how it kind of starts shaking down. We'll see glimpses of that between now and the start of the season, but in Season 11, we are going to see people pull out all of their tricks that they've been holding back, and we'll definitely see the Necromancer hit that 4-man meta. That is not necessarily important for a group of casual players, but for the end game laddering that you see in seasons, it is a really important thing to consider. So yes, the Necromancer is good. Yes, the Necromancer will be in the group meta. To what extent, we don't know yet. Is the Necromancer good for a casual player who's just coming in? Absolutely. There's a lot of visceral stuff. There's a lot of different kinds of builds you can make, and you can kind of play the Necromancer you want to play and still have a good enough build to at least do Greater Rift 80, which is it's a step in the right direction. And I think we're also going to see that the Necromancer pushes really far up ahead of other things and is probably actually a lot stronger than we think it is, simply because people haven't necessarily discovered all the little tricks yet. You know, this set in the background, people are going to be running now, and I actually now hope it does get nerfed when I reflect on it, because that means it will open up a huge set of different sets to be running, and you will see people get creative. We saw this in the beta. If there was one set that was dominating because of something cheesy, such as the immunity 100% of the time on the Rasmus set, then yeah, people are going to run that and nobody else is going to test anything. And the people who are testing other things aren't necessarily the cutting edge players, so you're not necessarily getting a good read on how good that Necromancer actually is. But I think as we go through this next couple weeks going up to Season 11, and especially the first few weeks into Season 11, we are going to see a massive change in the way that people are building Necromancers. And I think it probably will be, even with the nerf, I think it will probably be stronger than what we assume it actually is at. When the Necromancer beta came down and we were waiting for it to come out, my initial thoughts were it's not ready based on what we had in the beta. Now that the Necromancer is out and we see what build they have, they weren't running any big balance things on the internal build. There's a couple polished stuff that we see in the launch, such as some of the attacks from the Skeletal Mages look a little bit better. And there's a couple other animations that also you could tell tiny bits of difference. So they did polish things up. Was it ready to launch? I think it needed, again, a couple more weeks in beta and maybe another build on beta to kind of get it right where the money is. But I think they did the right thing launching it, because it means that you get it in the hands of more players. So before the start of this next season, we can get things like this Inarius set with Mirenes fixed and be able to see more builds come out and have a really exciting Season 11 with the Necromancer. So is it worth it? Yes. I think it's worth the $15 if you're already playing a lot of Diablo. If you don't play a lot of Diablo, you have to kind of take it on a case-by-case basis. And if you don't play Diablo at all, because maybe you don't own it, Diablo, the base game, Reaper Souls, and the Necromancer, I think there's a bundle. If there's not a bundle with that, it's just the two, so it's Diablo and Reaper Souls. There's a bundle going on where you can get them for really cheap, and it's worth it to do so if you want to play the game, as you see fit. Play the Monk, play the Crusader, play whatever you want. And then if you're like, yes, I'm really into this, then pick up the Necromancer, right? So you kind of have to determine whether or not it's worth it for you, not necessarily is it worth it in general. Is the class good? Yeah, it's absolutely really good. I think it's a lot better than we think it will be, and we'll see that only once the season really starts, I feel. But at the end of the day, I like the Necromancer. I think it is good that they launched it when it did, and I will be playing it for many seasons to come. And that should tell you enough right there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, but with all of that being said, we shall see you guys next time.